This is the Pro Wrestling Reflection Podcast with your host, the Professor Chalbello Veracruz.
What a run!
Mr. Wonderful Tommy Wonder.
And I will take the powers of those that have no fear!
And the prodigal one, JB.
The cream, the cream of the crop.
Now it's time to go back in time in the time machine.
The American dream! Dusty Rhodes! Too sweet!
The living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo! Look at this. He's I don't believe it.
Happy Halloween, Reflection Night. Well, we're not there yet, but happy Halloween. We're so close. You can smell it. Can you smell it? I can smell it. Can you smell those chocolate candies, the Kit Kats, the Hershey's Kisses, the Junior Mints? I don't know what people leave on their doorsteps and give out to the kiddies, but you know what? I'm going to be dressed. I got my Biden mask and I got my Trump mask. I'm going as Two-Face. So either you're going to give me some candy or I'm going to demand it with the Gestapo agencies. I got the Army, I got the Navy, I got everybody on my side you're going to give me some damn candy. That's all that matters to me. I don't care what it is because I love them sweets. And before TW even says anything remotely that I'm gay here when I say I like sweets, that's neither here nor there. This is the Halloween edition of the PWR Podcast here at the PWR Networks at PWR.com. And before I even introduce myself, before I introduce my partner in crime, I just want to give a shout out because I always keep saying, this is your PWR Podcast. This is your show, Reflection Nights. This is your show, Magnificent 7, Elite 8, Naughty 9, Terrific 10, The Essential 11. This is your show to the PWCites. This is your show to the Big Vitoites. So I got to give a shout out to the person that gave me the idea. And that is Greenpeace, a.k.a. the Iron Lung. Why is he called the Iron Lung? Because he has listened to this show, and I've always called TW the Iron Stomach. So since he's Greenpeace, he is the Iron Lung. And he slid into the DMs of the professor. He said, I like the shows. Shut up here. Shut up. I don't like that shit. But anyway, he slid into the DMs. He said he loves the show. He loves TW. He loves the stories about his wrestling past. He loves his insights about AEW. He just said, and I love all the spotlights you do. He loves the he loves all the titles. He loves all the spotlight. He likes the movies and all that stuff. But he asked me a question, and I was kind of dumbfounded, TW. He said, why didn't you ever do a spotlight on the Steel Cage match? And I thought about that. I looked in the mirror. I looked at myself, and I said, yeah, we've never really done the concept of the Steel Cage match. So, this is the Greenpeace. He gave me the idea. And since it is Halloween Eve, or we're close to that, Hallows Eve, whatever the case may be, Greenpeace, one-on-one. Well, I don't know what that means.
1 week away.
Oh, either way, neither here nor there. But anyway,
you this on Halloween.
Well, who cares? We might be off on Sunday because I'm going to be on trick-or-treating. You're going to be trick-or-treating anyway.
Yes.
Neither here nor there. But anyway, Greenpeace gave me the idea, so I wanted to give that concept. I want to give the shout-out to Greenpeace, the Iron Lung one. So it's his idea, his concept. So this is the PWR Podcast. This is the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, the Steel Cage Carnage here at the PWR Networks at PWR.com. And I'd like to introduce myself because I am vain like that. I am that magnanimous one. I am that scholarly one. I'm the studious one, but most importantly, I'm the glorious one. The only objective man here in the IWC, YWC, the only objective man in this podcast punditry. Your friend and mine, the Professor Chabel Cruz. And of course, with me by my side, He's the iron stomach one, not the iron lung one, the iron stomach one. He is the idiot of the dum-dum duos. He is the conservative liberal, the liberal conservative, your friend of mine, Mr. Wonderful, Tommy Strong, a.k.a. the Tommy Wonder. How are you doing, my friend? What is your costume going to be when we get to Halloween?
You know, last year I went as Macho Man. I don't know what I'm going to do. I do one day. I'm so freaking fed up with being cold here. I think I'm going to wait until I'm actually a Floridian, which hopefully is 5-6 years from now. I'm going to either get in shape, and I'm going to take one of them belts right there, that one right there, and I'm going to get me a nice big-ass wig with some aqua net, and I'm going to get a bodysuit and spray paint the Warrior logo, and I'm going to be the Warrior this version. Where's he at?
The 92 circa version where he had the bodysuit and the looking like he had muscles when he wasn't?
No, not that one.
Oh, okay.
Well, this isn't a good version of it because the other version's on my wall, but it's kind of this version, but where he painted it on his chest. The logo on his chest. I thought that was the WrestleMania match, but this is the WrestleMania.
WrestleMania 6. He painted it on his chest.
I want to be that Warrior. That version. Look at that guy.
But you live in Michigan and you never. Oh, JYD, Junkyard Dog.
And it's Chase in blue.
But you live in the Michigan area where the weather is never cooperative for you, so you cannot be the ultimate warrior.
I was just telling the customer the other day. I said, when I was a kid trick-or-treating, I remember sweating my ass off, just being hot as shit. And I haven't had a Halloween as an adult yet where I felt that way. But I think as you're a kid, you're excited, you're hyperventilating in those cheap rubber. You remember the costumes we wore? They were just one big plastic apron, basically, with Frankenstein's body painted on it, and then you had that stupid plastic mask with string, and that everyone's costume was made the same. And everyone got them at Kmart or a knockoff of Kmart, and that was that. And just dying out there. And now, man, it's cold before Halloween. Like today was cold. Like I told you before we recorded, it started off 45 degrees. You can kind of hear it in my voice. I got a sore throat. I've been feeling a little under the weather the last couple of days because the last couple of days I've wore pants because I saw the weather. Otherwise, I'd be wearing shorts out there freezing my ass off. But here's the problem. I'm better off freezing my ass off because when I wear pants because it's 45 at the start of the day, then when it hits 75, I'm regretting the fact that I'm wearing pants. Today, I took the jacket off. Yesterday, I kept it on all day. So you end up sweating, coming out of people's houses, and the sweat freezes to your face, even though it's not freezing, but, 50 degrees. Sweating is not very fun to do when you go back out in the 50 degrees. It's chilly.
Absolutely not.
All day long, and then you just feel like ass for a good week. So every day, God's giving me signs that I need to move to Florida. So, JB, we'll find your ass, and I'm going to ask you. I know I don't want to live in Miami. Miami is a place that has two types of people. You ready?
Okay. Tourists
and strippers that think they're going to meet and marry a professional athlete. And some of them do. But that's it. That's what's there. The locals
that's how you lie and say you were actually a professional athlete and marry the stripper and then lie to her.
Carry pictures of me with the title belts throughout my career for the Iron Lung. I'm going to say, this is what made the Iron Lung a fan right here.
There you go. And this is where you can go and say, I'm an AEW wrestler with the belt, and they won't even know the difference. The strippers won't know the difference.
I can have my friend make me a shirt that says Tommy Wonder is AEW.
There you go. It's all elite.
Would be all elite. Full heel turn.
There you go. You need a Tommy Wonder is all elite. But anyway, again, we are doing.
That's a good idea.
See,
that might happen.
I'm the professor. I'm the glorious one. I have these thoughts in my head. But anyway, let's get into this special Spotlight TW. It is going to be a nice nostalgic time machine running episode here because, we're going to go from the past to the present to the future because let me start by this. Since you are the wrestler, how did you fight in some steel cage matches in your illustrious career?
It's funny because
were you on the card?
Oh, definitely on the card. Matter of fact, recently, 2000, probably 15, the year before I went and saw Travis in North Dakota was the last year he came to the reunions in Lima, they had a double cage scaffold match that year. No. It was a single cage scaffold match. The year before, they had a double cage match. In Lima, Ohio, if you listen to this and you're anywhere near it, I think Rick Vickery is close enough that he could. I think he's been to War Wrestling shows, but it's the best wrestling in Ohio. You know, I say that with some partiality, but the fact that I've not heard of anything else down there being run, having even remotely the amount of shows or the amount of fans that come to those shows. I've been there as a wrestler. I've been there as a guy going back to visit. I've gone there just to hang out, even when it wasn't a Hall of Fame show or whatnot. And it's always, it was hands down my favorite town to wrestle in when I wrestled. Taylor, Michigan being a close second, or actually Taylor would probably be a 1B to Lima's 1A, and then LaSalle, Ontario would be 1C, because I mean I love wrestling and all.
Is that still War Wrestling, or that's different?
No. War Wrestling's Lima. MTW, which was Midwest Territorial Wrestling, which Los Rudos renamed Mexican Territorial Wrestling, and then BCW, which is Scott D'Amore's promotion, is LaSalle, Ontario. So LaSalle, Ontario, and Lima have a lot in common in the fact that they're small towns, and they cheer the good guy, they boo the bad guy. So that's always my preference, right? I wasn't a heel that wanted to go out there and get cheered. I wasn't a heel that I wanted to sell merch, you know, but I was ahead of my time. No one was selling merch when I was wrestling yet. It wasn't until the end. And then you learn the side note, you learn the hard way. When you make merch, you end up giving it to the boys more than you sell it, because everyone's like, I want a shirt. And they give you theirs, so you give them your, like almost like swapping jerseys at the end of a NFL game. But Taylor was different in the fact that they cheered the heels and booed the bad guys. And I think I told you this before. John Muse told me when we started as a heel, we would be faces by the third month. And I was like, what? And he nailed it. They were cheering us by the end of the second month. The third month was the big blow-off against the baby faces, and they cheered us when we won. So we ended up being baby faces. And so with Lima, they have cage matches. They have gimmick matches. They have a scaffold in the cage match. But the funny thing about it is, as you're doing your intro, I'm thinking, holy shit, I've never been in a cage match. Not once. I've been in ladder matches. I've been in matches that were the ultimate. I forget what the guy called them. The ultimate. What is my battery dying on my iPad? What's happening here?
No, you're good. You're good.
No, it just dimmed for some reason. But I was in a match where it started off as a battle royal with an odd amount of people. And once one guy got eliminated, it turned into a 5-on-5 match like Survivor Series, except for once that guy got eliminated, and it was 9 guys, it turned into, it actually might have been 9 guys down to 8, and then 8 to 7 became a ladder match. Then it became a Falls Count Anywhere match. Then it became something else match. Then it became a 2 out of 3 falls match between the last 2 guys. So it was called the Ultimate or something. They never did it twice because it was way too confusing. I wrestled Edge and his partner Sexton Hardcastle, or he was Sexton Hardcastle, Joey Legend in a tornado match where it was me and Edge most of the match fighting each other, and Rico and Legend fighting each other until we all got back in there together before. In the dark, because the power was out in the building, and we're smashing each other with pop cans. You would have liked it. It was ECW style, right? But never did a cage match. But the double cage that they did in Lima, the cages weren't the same. So imagine seeing what I like to call, I think I told Travis I called it this. I call it the AIDS quilt of steel cage matches because it was all different panels. And I think they tied them together. And when dudes, this guy, Matt Mason, I love the guy. He ended up retiring a year later. The guy he's great, man. Matt Mason's name is Matt Appleton in real life, but he'd had enough. And unfortunately, I met him when he was already doing it for about 5-10 years, which was the amount of time it'd been since I've been down to Lima. And he just had the look, and he had the charisma. He looked like John Cena, to be honest with you, but no offense, John, but could wrestle, like he,
that hurt the professor, but go ahead.
No. I think John Cena can work, but I don't think he cares that you're not going to confuse him with Brett or Shawn, right?
Of course.
Matter of fact, he had a great match with Shawn at WrestleMania. So I think he'd take that over, no offense to Matt Mason, his career, but he did a high cross body off the top of this cage onto like 5 dudes at the bottom, because I think it was like a War Games type match. It wasn't just one-on-one. But then Jock Sampson And if you listen to the show and you like the IWYWC, Jock Sampson, look for him on Facebook. He's a really, really, really good dude. He has it. He's a throwback guy. He's definitely Southern wrestling style. Tons of charisma. He wrestled Dusty Dillinger, who Pizza Bob, me and Matt called, or Travis called him, because that's what everyone called him. He owned a pizzeria there, and he ended up getting into business after me and Travis moved on. And they wrestled each other in a scaffold match that was a cage match, and it was fun to see. But I was stunned to sit here and listen to you talk and realize, wow, maybe I do have to have one more match, and I got to go have a cage match with somebody.
One more match. One more match. One more match. Well, yeah, it is. Well, it is nuts. Or maybe you were just lucky. I mean, you did business the way for yourself.
I wasn't volunteering for one, I can tell you that. But as a fan, growing up, I'm sure I would have been all in when I did it. I'd have been like, yeah. Because it would have probably been the main event, which I did a ton of main events, not patting myself on the back, but on an indie level, I was in the main event as a tag team wrestler, as a singles wrestler. I did it, so I think that's probably why it never crossed my mind that I didn't do a cage match, because I've done elimination matches. That is your wrestling bucket list, a cage match. If you ever believe I didn't do a cage match, that's
Well,
nuts.
before anything, TW. Let's get into the semantics or the logistics of the Steel Cage match here on Steel Cage Carnage on the Spotlight Edition. We know that the evolution of the Steel Cage match has grown from when you and I were kids. Because back when you and I were kids, let's say the 70s and maybe the 80s and early 90s, no matter what organization you was, the Steel Cage match was meant to be the ultimate blow-off to end a particular feud. There was, you couldn't have this match. Well, let me rephrase it, because sometimes people would say, "Oh, wait a minute, Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair fought in many steel cage matches." Yes, they toured the country and fought in multiple cage matches on house shows. TW, we know this. We know this as fans, but that was a reason for that, to get asses in seats. So TW, let's educate these Reflectionites. In your youngum days, what did the cage match mean to you when you saw it on TV, or when you paid a ticket in the Michigan area?
It was scary to me. Like perfect example, my stories are always going to involve Hogan, if you're asking me as a kid. And the first one I remember distinctly was Bundy. And I thought, oh, he's done. I didn't realize it was there to stop Stud and Heenan and whoever else was in the Heenan family at the time from interfering with Hogan, because they did such a good job of selling it as a savage match, like the barbarity, is that a word? The barbarics of it. And he had the broken ribs. Don Morocco, he helped, and he wasn't even in the Heenan family.
Oh, you're talking about WrestleMania 2.
Right,
Bundy,
but
Hogan,
the main event, it was Morocco holding Hogan in the corner so Bundy could keep splashing him. And was the avalanche the splash in the corner, or the actual splash? I think it was the splash in the corner.
Well, they kind of slipped the tongue.
Because he hit him and then he crumbled to the ground. So it was an avalanche. But I always thought, man, this is it. And but oddly enough, the hindsight where they would show you old stuff like Snuka Morocco, or, we watched for preparing for this, Backlund and Snuka, where Snuka was the heel. The babyface almost always won, right? But you don't think that when you're watching your guy in the now. Perfect example is one of the ones you had me watch was Austin Idol versus Lawler, and so
there was a lot of rules in that.
Was a feud. Tommy Rich looked like Double J out of shape. I didn't realize it was Tommy Rich. Then some girl tries hopping in the ring, and there's like 17 police officers. I don't know if they're part of like an Undertaker gimmick or if they're actually security stopping this girl from getting in the ring, and Tommy Rich is daring her. But that whole thing was laid out. Lawler had never lost a hair match, and he's in this cage match, and he loses it because I think that's my problem with the cage matches as a kid, because everyone was designed to keep the other guys out to make it fair, and every one of them ended with the guys getting in there anyway. So I think in hindsight, I hated them. Now as an adult, watching them back now, they're pretty one-dimensional. They're not as entertaining, I think, as I thought they were when I was a kid, when my guy won. When my guy lost, not so much.
It's interesting you say that, because let's say when we were kids, the cage match had a big fight feel. Right. You know, if it was for the title or it was just to end this feud, but it was a big fight feel. And, you know, since we are fans for going on 40 years, we have seen a cage match. We've seen the War Games. We've seen Tower of Doom. We've seen Thunderdome. We've seen Hell in a Cell, Elimination Chamber. They've upped the ante so much that it's not a big fight. They have to make the big fight feel even bigger, but then they overthink it. Is that a great assessment, or do you have a different take on that?
Yeah, I would definitely say, yeah, you're I think you're over expecting it too. Like, you're expecting some of them are just duds, you know, like they're whatever. And like, the long argument has always been blue steel cage versus the fence, and the wrestlers will tell you they prefer the fence because it had give, and that blue steel cage was unforgiving. But to watch it, I would prefer watching it in the blue cage because the camera can fit through the hole and you can watch it, you know, or the overhead shot.
I think the blue cage was actually more fan friendly, even in the arena, because you can actually see what's going on. Because I was at Madison Square Garden for a cage match. I forget, was it San Martino and Savage? I think I was there for that one. They were fighting in the cage, and was the blue steel cage match. And I didn't have like front. I wasn't sitting ringside. You know, my father could do only so much, but he got us good seats enough that when I saw the cage, it was the blue cage, and you could see what was going on. I think the NWA cage, which looks more realistic, it's the fencing and all that stuff. But yeah, if you're in the arena, even on TV, it's like,
on TV, it comes off terrible because the lighting hits it and reflects, so it's even harder to see. If you recall, Ronnie Garvin won the world title from Flair at Cobo Hall in the steel cage. Like, you know, and Cobo Hall was one of them arenas that was dark with only the light on the ring. So it almost looks like Quentin Tarantino opening the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. You just see light. You can't even see what's going on in there. But I think if I had my druthers, I would take the blue cage, the WWF cage, with the NWA rules. I always hated guy climbing out or going through the door wins because two reasons. One, climbing out and going through the door proves it's not keeping anybody out of there if you can get out your damn self. And two, it's the coward's way, right? It's why is the guy, you know, I think. No. I don't know if you and I.
Wait. I have to disagree. Well, I understand what your point is, but in the semantics of WWF wrestling in the cage match, for the hero, going over the cage was not a coward's way out. Going over that was the noble way. Going through the door was technically the coward's way out.
However, the ending of Snuka Backlund is brilliant because Snuka does that same Snuka splash that he's known for with Morocco, that he hits it on him in 82?
83.
I didn't know he did it before, but he did it to Backlund and missed, and a battered, beaten Backlund crawled out, and Snuka still tried. So it saves Snuka. It doesn't make Backlund look like a coward. It makes him look like he took everything he had left from the ass whooping he took and still was able to get out of it. Like he still had his brain. So I like that finish in that regard. And Hogan climbing over the top, I do remember as a kid thinking, stop showboating, just go through the door. Because if you recall, Orndorff and him had a dead tie, and Hogan won on the replay. I think that was Saturday night's main event.
Yes, it was.
But I remember being mad at Hogan and thinking, if you would have lost, it would have been your own fault because you didn't go through the door. Whereas the NWA version, they locked that door. It was never going to get unlocked because you couldn't escape it. And anyone trying to climb that cage, we all know it's one of the reasons they made the blue cage, besides for the visual of being able to record the camera through it, was the ability to climb it, because it was way hard to climb the fence cage with those wrestling boots on. So Snuka could do it because he was barefoot. No, I mean, that shit probably hurt. Don't get me wrong, but
I get you.
You know, you can't really climb. So the NWA match made more sense. But the thing that I was starting to tell you before we recorded, it's just by happenstance, because you sent me a bunch of matches and I watched them in reverse order. The very first match is the Von Erichs and the Freebirds I watched. The ring is barely shorter than the cage. The cage is only like, if there was a fourth rope, that's how high the cage was. Maybe a 4.5 or 5 ropes.
Because I think that one wasn't at the Reunion Arena. I think that one was at a Texas Fairgrounds. So that's maybe why the ring looks smaller. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that one.
Cage was small, and but it felt more like a hog pen than a steel cage. And that one, I'll tell you what, if any of the boys in the back left the promotion after that match because of nepotism, I would agree with them. Because you start off with Kerry and Kevin versus all three Freebirds, and Kerry gets pinned. And then and then P.S. Hayes gets pinned next. And I'm like, if those would have been the last two in there if I was booking, not the first two gone. So now you got Kevin against Gordy and Buddy Jack.
Buddy Roberts.
And it basically... I do like how they ended up doing it because he got the upper hand by doing the old duckaroo and then smashing them together and using their own boot. And then out of nowhere, Mike, with the worst tape job ever for a tape-separated shoulder, just comes in and pins Buddy Jack, who fell off the top of the cage. But that cage was so low. Then you have Austin Idol versus I watched back.
Let me just interrupt you. Hold your thought a little bit because I want to do a comparison between WWE and NWA at the time. Let's go with the WWE first. I don't want to. Hopefully, you'll still have your train of thought, but let's go with WWE first. Two guys enter that ring. There is no referee, so the ambiance is there that two guys are going to beat the holy hell out of each other. You gave an example of Bob Backlund and Jimmy Snuka. The first cage match that I saw as a kid was actually the Coliseum home video of Hulkamania Volume 1. The first cage match that I saw on TV or on VHS or whatever was Hulk Hogan versus John Studd at the Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis. I think that's where it was for Hulkamania Volume 1. So when I look at that match and you got a 6'8" dude in Hogan and a 6'10" dude in Studd, you got two barbarians with no referee and, no rules and all this stuff. Yeah, you're right. And sometimes that, whether you go out the door, it's technically was supposedly the coward's way out for the heel. The babyface can get a pass on going through the door or going over the top because he's the hero. It doesn't matter. In that match, I saw blood on both. I saw, it was gritty, it was methodical, it was all that stuff. Now, hindsight on the NWA side, you just said it, it's better because they have the referee in the ring. You fight, no rules, you can do whatever you want in that cage, but the referee is there to solidify a 3 count. The first cage match I saw, again, was a VHS. It was actually going backwards. It was the Flair for the Gold, Starrcade 83. I rewatched it with Ric Flair, going and regaining the NWA Heavyweight Championship from Harley Race. Now, as a young kid, you see Ric Flair being the hero there. He's bleeding, how the crimson red. He's a blonde man, but then he's a redhead after the match. And everybody celebrates and all that stuff. Now, when I'm older, I take what you keep saying, and sometimes it looks a little bit more predictable and all that stuff. They called it a Flair for the Gold, but I thought there was like, ooh, you don't know. It's that little 10% doubt. You just don't know if Flair is going to achieve that dream. And the match was okay, I guess, for the ambiance of Charlotte, North Carolina, and all that stuff. But TW, you did talk about it a little bit with the differences, and you even mentioned the Freebirds and the Von Erichs, and their match kind of goes with the NWA rules. There's a referee in there. They were part of the NWA system, so they have to have the referee in there. So I just wanted to use those parallels for all the reflection as how different a cage match is from these two particular organizations. Go ahead, TW. I'm sorry.
They're way different, and my train of thought goes with it because, for one, just the whole idea of how you win and the whole idea of why you're having it and all that. Like, I would say WWE was more of a, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, an occasion, because they didn't have them all the damn time.
Attraction.
Right. It was an attraction, almost like the Survivor Series. It wasn't once a year, but it wasn't much more than that. Whereas NWA felt like there was always one. And first one I ever saw on TV was UWF, One Man Gang versus, I think, Duggan in a loser league sound match. And that was when Duggan went to WWF after he lost that one. And but my train of thought goes with these because you have World Class who has that ring that's just shy of being a 4th rope or a 5th rope high. And then Bob Backlund versus Snuka was the old NWA style cage that was the 15 feet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then Austin Idol versus Lawler was like a Hell in a Cell without a roof. It encased the entire area, so you didn't do the whole throwing them into the...
Jerry Law was not going to jump off the cage. He was not going to risk that.
Into it.
Mm-hmm.
So that one felt more like keeping people out of it, you know, like, and it didn't work, by the way.
Right.
It didn't work. So they all had their own twist on it. And, you know, throughout time, like when we were kids, it was like you said, the NWA and the WWF were completely different mindsets on how or why they had their cage matches. But now over the years, I think the WWF's even had cage matches where they had pins and submissions, not just escapes. I think they had all four. So we've got cage matches now that are escape. You got cage matches now that are pin or submit. Now you got cage matches that are all of them, you know, or exclusive to that. And I don't know.
Are you a fan of are you a fan of exclusive, or every option is available to you as best?
I prefer pin submission. I think as a blow off, and it's supposed to be the be all end all, and you're keeping everybody else out, I want a winner. You know, so as much as I rag on Magnum versus Tully, it had a winner. So it did what it was supposed to do. Magnum came out on top. Tully went on to put over the next guy, and Magnum went on to challenge Flair or whatever before his accident. So it did what it was supposed to do. But you have to be careful, because you do have to have the heel win every now and again, or everyone's just going to know that the babyface wins. And I think that's why the WWF didn't do them as often. And I think that's why the NWA had Ric Flair still win matches with the Horseman's help. You know, one of my favorite finishes ever is Luger dropping the U.S. title to Dusty Rhodes when J.J. Dillon throws the chair into the cage and it backfires, and Dusty DDTs Lex on the chair to win the U.S. title and basically turn Lex babyface. That's a good finish, because that same spot is probably how Flair won on a different...
No. That same spot that you're talking about from Starrcade 87 Reflection Nights, on Thanksgiving night, 1987, that spot worked for Luger during the summer of 87 when he won the U.S. title from Nikita Koloff.
I just meant Flair because Flair would win cage matches. I didn't know... That makes it even better to me, because now
I'm just giving you the dichotomy of what you're saying, where it came from.
You have a heel victory in a cage match with help, and then you have it backfire, and you have that heel lose. So it keeps the fans going. It's anybody's match, you know. Whereas, you know, Hogan versus Bundy, hindsight 50-50, we all knew Hogan's winning, but at the same time, he's battered and bruised. It's a steel cage. It's the most barbaric match in WWE history until Hell in a Cell. Until, what's that other one?
Elimination Chamber.
The Elimination Chamber is probably even the worst of all, because they're taking bumps on these grates. And so I just think they both did it right. I think they both did it right. If WWE had the cage match as often as NWA did, the babyface would have won every time. I can't even think of the last cage match where the babyface didn't win, because you got Brett versus Owen, where Owen won the regular match and then Brett got the win back in the cage. You got Warrior dropping the IC title to Rick Rude in the regular match and then defending it in the cage when he's world champion, like the obvious number one contender is the guy who just beat him, and Warrior wins. Well, Shawn Michaels beats Triple H or Undertaker in the cage with help, because Kane come out and interfered. So there you go. I just answered my own question, and I watched that 20 minutes ago. So, but that's not a cage match. That's a Hell in the Cell. I'm talking the regular cage, the regular formula. Hogan beats Bundy. Hogan beats Orndorff. Warrior beats Rude. Brett beats Owen.
Right. It's funny you say that, because, like I said, the evolution, even for WWE with the cage match, changed from the 80s into the 2000s and beyond. And I want to and the thing about the NWA, you are so right to me. Well, Pepsi, that's a nice symbol there. That's old school right there. That's a flashback.
No, it's cream soda, and it's awesome.
Oh, boy. I don't know about cream soda, but anyway.
Shop, cream soda, cola. No, it's very good. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Cool.
Put some vodka in the next one.
You should have just had a root beer. You know, you just go for that.
No, it's not like root beer. It's cream soda.
I know. I'm just saying. Either way. But anyway, neither here nor there.
Orange vodka in there.
You talked about how the 80s, WWE, it was an attraction for these cage matches. It was somewhat of predictable that the hero would win maybe 99 out of 100 times, let's just say. The NWA was a little bit different. Some of them were blow-offs, some of them extended feuds, and then sometimes they were statements to elevate a feud. And I want to give you one example of the cage that wasn't even a match. Do you remember the night where Dusty Rhodes broke his leg in a cage and he wasn't even in the goddamn match? It was Flair against Nikita Koloff in the cage. And of course, Dusty, out of respect, quote unquote, he had respect for Flair, saved Ric Flair from the attack on the Russians. Who would come down that aisle? The Anderson brothers, Ole and Arn Anderson. And they would beat the holy hell out of Dusty Rhodes, breaking his leg. And like you said, how the cage kept people out, this was a funny form, not funny, but this was an interesting formula, how the cage kept the heroes out, how the three heels got Magnum TA out the way, got the Rock and Roll Express out the way, got Sam Houston out the way. They kept the cage door closed. They couldn't go over the top. And Dusty Rhodes' leg was obliterated, TW. Just like you said, the NWA perpetuated storylines. And this wasn't even a match. But it's so infamous because of what it was. People actually, this was the main event. This was the old school ways, Reflectionites. TW kind of said this, I think, last week or maybe during the past Reflection podcast. It took about 30 minutes to 45 minutes to put the goddamn cage up. So people were not watching the cage being put up. Some people were interested, but it's kind of boring to watch people put the shit up. You're waiting patiently as much as you can while you're drinking your beer, saying, get the goddamn cage up, man. Well, I want to see the match. But on the flip side, when this happened, you know what people did? They stayed watching them take the cage down and the ring down. This was so vivid and this was so visual that it was so perfect. And they always said, and Flair and Arn Anderson even said, they almost did not get out there with their lives because people wanted to beat the shit out of them. What say you, TW, about that history?
So that show I told you about in Lima, they built that damn cage in the middle of the show. It wasn't the last match. It should either be first or last, right?
I get you that.
You rip the shit down, and then you have your show, or last, and you have an intermission to set up the cage. And the good thing about having an intermission right before the cage is alcohol sales stop at intermission. Once intermission's over, there's no more alcohol sales. So it would have been a perfect reason to extend sales, then have your cage match. But now it's beautiful. They just lower the shit up and down with the Owen Hart thing. You know, too soon. So it's better now. They can have it just while they're showing you the 37-minute recap of why we're having the cage match in the first place. But yeah, back then, it's getting back to that Von Erichs and the Freebirds. The fans wanted to kill the Freebirds. Like, they lost, and the fans are still there wanting to kill them, right? Like, you almost are better off cage until the fans leave, and then they can tear the shit down so you can get back to the locker room safe. And there weren't barricades like there are now. Back then, there was some damn ropes and a couple off-duty fucking rodeo clowns helping you get to the ring and hopefully swatting dudes out of your way when you come out. But you know what I did hate about some of those cage matches? And I think I talked to you about a Ring of Honor match that did it, but it wasn't a cage match. It was a bunkhouse match. I don't like when they come out and wrestle in their damn street clothes. It's a cage match. It's not. So it had me sitting there because, again, I watched
you don't remember the bunkhouse stampede in a cage in '88? They were all in jeans.
I know. It's a terrible look. As a fan, you could sneak in there and no one will realize you're in there if you snuck in good enough, and you just be one of the dudes in there, and they'll just be work punching you, and be like, wait a minute, who the hell is this guy? And then they'd all turn and eat him up. But my point is it made me sit there when I'm watching that match going, does this add to it or take it away? And then it made me question, okay, well, why do the other guys wear their gear when they're in there? I want to see the wrestler in their gear every time. Like, I like Roman Reigns more now because he's not dressed like a security guard, even though he's still wearing the damn black slacks. He looks like a wrestler again because, he shows off the tattoo and everything else, and he doesn't have that bulletproof vest thing on. Now, if it was a singlet type thing, fine. But the watch the guys wrestle in the jeans, it feels like they took a night off, you know.
Right.
And then I watched some other stuff, you know, when the YouTube matches end, they just play whatever's next. And I saw a match. It was what a weird match. Savio Vega and Jesse James, and they kept calling him Double J because I think Jarrett left. This is the first time he left. Okay. So they just started calling Jesse James the Double J, the real Double J, against Farouk and Austin. And Austin come out around the ring and takes out Road Dogg's leg, and Brett comes out in a freaking cardigan and jeans and boots and takes his place and then wrestles. That makes more sense to me. It looks impromptu, which brings me to another peeve of mine. When a guy makes the save and they play us music first. So much for the element of surprise. If you're going to play us music, why would it's he just standing back there waiting to save somebody all night? Okay, this is where I'm going to do it, play my music, and I'm going to run out there. I just don't like it. And so when these cage matches where they're wearing, I get the bunkhouse rules. It's a different animal altogether. P.S. I hate that match. I hate all of them. I hate bull rope match. I hate cowbell match. I don't, you know, let me ask you a question. Hell in the Cell, Michaels is absolutely bloody from forehead to fucking ball sack. He's just bleeding everywhere. When did that change? When did they stop? When they went corporate? When they went stock?
Yes.
So
stockholders don't like blood.
Yeah, but they still advertise for Halloween Kills. They still advertise for Sons of Anarchy. I don't get it. Whatever. Just get new sponsors then. But anyways, a lot of the boys in the business, Travis is one of them. Rick Davies is a longtime wrestling friend of mine. He's a promoter, El Diablo. These dudes believe hardcore matches and steel cage matches, no matter how good the match will be, fall short if no one's bleeding. And I 1,000% disagree with them. I feel like if you want, so say Brett and Sean have the exact same Iron Man match, which many regard as one of the greatest matches of all time, and it's 60 freaking minutes, and the only fall is in the 65th minute, right?
Okay.
If they have that exact same match and there's a cage around it and no one's ever bumped the guy into the cage, they just had the cage there to stop DX from getting in there or stop the Hart Foundation from getting in there, is it less of a match now because no one bled? No. It's still one of the greatest matches of all time, right?
As long as you tell a story that makes sense.
So why do you have to have blood?
I think it depends on the nature of the feud and how much anger, how personal it is.
At this point, guys should just be on board with the fact that if a dude's going to bleed in a match in the WWE these days, it's going to be the hard way, and just appreciate that because it still happens.
All right, you know what? Let me flip that question to you, and I'll give you an example. Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3. We remember that, 93,173. Hogan slams Andre. Now, they had their feuds, quote-unquote, it's personal, from 87 to 88. Do you remember WrestleFest 1988 in Milwaukee? They fought in the
cage
blue
match.
They fought in the blue cage. I don't recall if it was Hogan who bled a little bit or Andre.
It would have been Hogan.
It would have been Hogan. But if he didn't bleed, if it was still them doing all that stuff without the blood, with the way how personal it was, is it still good? Is it still a pass for you?
I think if you take him and you throw him into that, like Shawn Michaels took a lot of back bumps into the cage, like the Mr. Perfect flip into it. I think if you do all that, there's no reason that he would end up bleeding unless you want him to bleed from the fucking back. So for myself, if blood is involved, it doesn't make the match less to me, but I don't need blood to make it more.
Okay.
It makes sense.
I'm just saying that sometimes...
The fact that there are kids watching, if someone gigs, you know, I wish I could think of the story. I think it's Jericho. I don't know. I think it was Jericho and Michaels, and I was reading about it. One of them was adamant that they were bleeding. Like, they had to have blood in this match. And it became the old, well, it's better to ask Vince for forgiveness than permission because they knew they'd be told no. And I think word got back to Vince, and they were like, don't do it. And then they did it. And I think it was Shawn and Jericho, and they both bled. I don't remember. I don't know why those two would be bleeding, but whoever it was, I think it involved Jericho. And they ended up, everyone agreed that it made the match better because of the heat, right? And they got the pass. And that's why I think it had to be Shawn, because he's the guy that would have got the pass. Jericho would have got the punishment, right? So so it might even been Shawn and Triple H. I don't know. But it was something. It was Shawn and Triple H. It was when he came back and he was feuding with Triple H, maybe even Helen. Whatever the case may be. Do I think
they had a cage match? I understand where you're going with this, though.
So the bottom line is, if they bleed in every cage match, why is it so fucking special? Now, if they bleed here and there, okay, all right, we got color, but I don't need it, and I'm not gonna Dave Meltzer it and half star taken away because there was no blood. It's crazy to me that people want blood, and my thing is, call me a prude, call me what you will, but part of this thought was because I was in the wrestling business, and I didn't want to happen to me what happened to Desmond Wolfe or whoever the other guy was that Abdullah cut. I don't want to bleed with some dude I don't know, and then I'm getting some shit that I don't want to get. And I didn't get it from a girl, at least. So
Desmond Wolfe, a.k.a. Nigel McGuinness, got hepatitis from, I think, Abdullah the Butcher because of
Abdullah. He made him bleed without permission. He just cut him without asking with the same dirty-ass blade that, by the way, he probably uses every night on himself. And it's just, to me, it's unsafe. So it's a practical reason why I'm okay with it not being in the match. But I just don't understand why people just discredit it. Now, that said, I used to play NWO Revenge, No Mercy, WrestleMania 2000, and I purposely would be just whacking a dude until their head bled. I popped when I made them bleed on the video game, but no one's getting hepatitis on the video game. So this is
a funny argument. This is a funny argument because right now in 2021, the TW people want the blood, and WWE can't give it, but AEW can. So they want to inject that, so quote-unquote realism into the fight, and probably it adds color to the match. Now let's flip it back into the 70s and 80s, even with cage matches. But since we couldn't be there at the arenas because, if Flair and Dusty were in a cage fighting in Charlotte, North Carolina, I can't see it on TV. I didn't have cable. You couldn't see it in Michigan. But how do we know that match was so epic? There was a picture on the aftermags in the cage, and after got the pic of maybe Flair being, by the fence, Dusty putting his hand right through the fence and making him bleed, and he got the right picture. So for the aftermags, and I'm just using them as an example. I'm not saying that was in the aftermags, but a cage match.
It was.
The picture was the heel's face rammed into the cage to get the blood trickling from their head, because that's what got you, A, hyped for their match, B, hyped to know what happened, and C, buy the magazine. So TW, I understand your argument against it. I'm not trying to give the argument for it. I'm just trying to give it a reason why for the business.
This is what I'm going to hit you with. That was then. This is now. It's been long enough that people shouldn't lose their ass when someone doesn't bleed in a cage match. That's my point.
I give you that.
Why does it ruin the match for you is my question. Not you. I was asking you if it did ruin the match for you. But,
as long as there's a reason, this doesn't ruin if it or doesn't.
My favorite match for the last 4 years, 5 years, however many it's been, maybe not last year, but the first three, my favorite match was hands down War Games. All three of the first three, right? Undisputed Era versus, I don't even know who they fought. But the 3-team one wasn't as good, but when they all were in there, it was. And then the third one was good. And last year, I don't even remember who was in it. I don't like when they start hodgepodge and they end up with Hogan Warrior, Luger and Sting, or Hogan Macho, Luger and Sting, where they're not really people that associate with each other. It's two different people, and they're just throwing guys in there. I don't like those so much. Not one guy bled in those War Games matches, and they still were talked about as the match of the year by many. And why? Because all the other shit they did. They did a ton of shit. They took some sick bumps. They took some crazy bumps. They took some risks. And that little metal plate that connects those two rings, they're power bombing dudes on that. So there's brutality in there, but you didn't need blood. If it happened, it happened, but it didn't. And it didn't take away from it is my point. And I don't think it would have made it better if they did. It would have just been, they also bled.
Well, since you brought up the War Games, let's talk about the evolution of the cage match itself. Because, again, like you said, we are jaded as wrestling fans because if you've seen one cage match, you've seen them all. So what could you do in a cage match? You've done the tag teams. You've done six-mans. You've done battle royals in a cage match. What can you do to up the ante? Well, Dusty Rhodes did that in 1987. He created the concept with the cage match, double cage match in double steel cages. He called it the War Games, and the first one, everybody says, is still one of the epic matches ever in the history of professional wrestling. The Superpowers and the Road Warriors against the Four Horsemen. Dusty Rhodes said the War Games concept was actually made for the Four Horsemen because you got all four guys, all four main eventers. You bought, asses. They bought asses in seats, and this concept, TW, was perfect for them and perfect for heroes to get one up on the Four Horsemen. They didn't lose no stock. They didn't lose no credence. They didn't lose their spots. It wasn't no title matches. So what say you, because since you brought up the Undisputed Era being the MVPs of the NXT War Games, of course, the Four Horsemen in the early stages of the War Games were the MVPs of those particular War Games.
Yeah, and they didn't have to win it to still be the MVP of it, right? Like they just were. It was a fight. The only problem I had with the War Games in NWA was the cage lid. It had a lid, and it was way too low. It almost killed Brian Pillman even earlier than his early death, and Sid was to blame.
It fucked up J.J. Dillon because of that low lid there, too.
But I just getting back to that, I like Dusty Rhodes. I think he's top 2, if not 1, for charisma in the history of the business, right? But he's nothing to look at. Like, as a kid, I didn't look at that dude and go, oh, I want to be like him. No, but do you know what I think really gave him such a rub? That War Games match and being associated with the Road Warriors. They were 6-man champions a million times, or at least always had the damn things. Yeah. And then you add Nikita Koloff to it. Really, if you look at that team, it's 3 tremendously built human beings and Dusty. But Dusty was just as much a badass as him. I believe he painted his face teaming with the Road Warriors on more than one occasion. But I just think, to me, that's what made Dusty cool for me. When he was wearing the damn JJ Dynamite hat with his little white afro or yellow afro, whatever he had, and wearing his dad jeans up to his belly button with a half-assed state house jacket from Japan, Kyoto, whatever that jacket's called. He didn't look appealing. He didn't look like a hero. He looked like the dude who would try to hustle me out of my money when I got $1 to go get a soda at the party store. Hey, man, what you gonna do with that $1?
Oh boy!
But when
he was the common man,
right? But you put him. He was Huggy Bear and Starsky and Hutch. But you put him with the Road Warriors and then Nikita Koloff to boot, and it's just, which inevitably that means Nikita's the guy who replaced Magnum, right? Which is what they did in the storyline. Like, he had sympathy for his rival, whatever. But it made Dusty just like them to me. The rub, if you will. And I don't think anybody thinks the rub was going from the Road Warriors to Dusty. I think everyone thinks that Dusty was giving the rub to Nikita and the Road Warriors because nobody was more over than Dusty Rhodes in the South. Nobody. This dude was the Hulk Hogan of the Southern Mason-Dixon line area, which I think he was over in the WWE, but he didn't stay long enough. I think if he would have stayed long enough or came sooner, he was a little long in the tooth when he finally got to the WWE. But, dude, Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors and Nikita Koloff, it's probably, and I know War Games isn't Survivor Series, but if we're going to do teams of 4, the greatest team of 4 of all time. Actually, 4. You have to know. It's the Road Warriors, it's the Ultimate Warrior, and it's the Modern Day Warrior. That is the greatest team ever assembled in the history of 4-man wrestling teams ever. I would say Dusty, Nikita, and the Road Warriors are number 2. And number 3, I surprise you, All 3 Demolition with Mr. Perfect, which was the opponent of the Road Warriors versus and Warrior and all the Warriors. Damn it, they were called the Ultimate Warriors.
So I hate it. But I just want to, let's keep it into the cage mindset because, again, you have to up the ante for the paying customer because, again, I'm not saying that cage matches got boring, but then when you add the double cage for the War Games concept and the rules of it, Dusty Rhodes, made these rules actually perfect. 2 men start for 5 minutes and then the coin toss. When you do it the first time, it's very intriguing. But then after like the 40th War Games, you always know that the bad guy always gets the bad guy always gets the advantage, the two-on-one advantage.
Oh,
so
yeah,
then
coin toss.
It gets redundant. So, you had to be more creative of how to get that, two-on-one advantage on the heel side. But anyway, we're not going into semantics. We're still talking about the cage matches. But TW, you said it. The Undisputed Era were the MVPs of your NXT War Games, and I remember they had it was the Undisputed Era against, I believe it was Pete Dunne, Ricochet, Kevin Owens. I forget the fourth guy, but again, it was one of your. They were the MVPs on that one when it was 4-on-4 on that one. So they were very they were very good. Of course, Adam Cole. It's debatable of what Adam Cole has become in AEW in comparison to the Adam Cole in NXT. It's night and day, in my humble opinion. But I'm not getting into any debates with any AEW stands out there. I just wanted to point out the obvious. But in the War Games concept, one of the most memorable War Games was 1996 TW, where it was the NWO against Team WCW. Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Sting, and Lex Luger. And of course, Sting was the odd man out because they did not trust him. So it was intriguing there. And then, of course, when you looked at it, if you was really dumb, if you lived in a soapbox and you did not know what Sting looked like, when you saw the NWO Sting doing what he did, and then, of course, Sting comes out 2 minutes later, and then he cleans house. But, of course, they added the drama and all that stuff. And Luger looks at him like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to not trust you. And then Sting just said, stick it. That's one of the most memorable things there. Or maybe the year after, well, it kind of looked predictable where Kurt Hennig betrayed the Four Horsemen. And, of course, he rammed the door on Ric Flair's head. What memory stands out between those 2 years in particular when it was NWO against maybe the Four Horsemen or Team WCW?
Hallelujah, because those happened after the Hogan, Savage, Sting, and... Oh,
you mean the Hulkamaniacs versus the Dungeon of Doom War Games
Dungeon
of 95?
Doom, which is arguably the worst War Games of all time.
I don't know. It was enjoyable. I don't know. I
it was hokey. It was when they were, if you can't beat them, join them. We're going to become the circus, WCW. But my memories of the NWO are not as fond as yours. At some point, to me, NWO, the original four, I'm in. Right? Mm-hmm. They did everything right. Hall, Nash, two of my favorite dudes. I don't know about Nash, but Diesel, I liked him because he was with Shawn. When he did that, I'm only going to fist bump people who got the black glove on. No, I'm out. That's. I think I told you, I thought Roman Reigns was headed to that level because they were so desperate to get him cheered. But I've always been a Scott Hall fan. When he teamed with Hennig, I was a Scott Hall fan. When he was doing jobs after that in WCW, it was Gator Scott Hall. I was a huge Diamond Stud fan, so I was a huge Razor Ramon fan. So when he came over, sadly, I got to tell you, Razor Ramon is what got me to start watching WCW. Not Luger.
Hey, whatever worked.
And I thought Adam Cole was going to be the Razor Ramon of AEW, but every time I watch Adam Cole on AEW, he's just another guy there. And it absolutely breaks my heart. And I can't.
It breaks my heart too. It's night and day what you see with Adam Cole, but that's neither here nor there.
That fucking spot where those two kiss him and he smiles. He's not even the Roddy Strong of he's the Bobby Fish of the damn Elite.
You gotta ruffle some feathers here if this gets on the YouTube.
That's my favorite wrestler right now is Adam Cole and Gargano, and they're both gone. I'm a man without a show because I can't watch NXT because Gargano's not there, Cole's not there. It's just, and I like LA Knight, and I feel like he loses every week. Now he's in a match with that dude Surfer guy with the boxing show. I'm a man without a promotion, and Ring of Honor ain't it. I can tell you that. I hope MLW, maybe I can watch that. But anyways, the NWO just got to the point like you ruin good things. Mr. Perfect as a Four Horseman is something that fits like a damn foot in a shoe. It's just the right size shoe. It's right. And for him to turn and join the NWO, it's like, come on, man. Does everybody got
the NWO? It got redundant.
For the Four Horsemen? And then Sting ends up being in it eventually anyway. And then 3 different damn NWOs. they ruined it. But Hogan, Nash, Hogan is the heel turn, and they were going to do Sting, I guess, but he didn't want to do it. Or was Macho Man going to be? Whatever. I think it was getting Sting. If Hogan wouldn't do it. But Hogan, Hall, Nash, and X-Pac, he doesn't get enough credit. This dude was the complimentary wheel in the DX after Shawn was gone, or was Hunter, the New Age Outlaws, and X-Pac, and he was the ideal fourth guy, which actually he was that after the NWO, wasn't he? He joined DX after NWO.
Yeah.
So he is as Travis likes to call him, he's a good hand. I don't know how he is as a human being. Seems to be a little cooler these days than he was in the drug years. But he was the perfect complementary piece. You had your giant guy, Hogan. You had your tag team, Hall and Nash, who also could be your giant guy if you want to interchange him. And then you got your smaller guy that can go for the U.S. title, the TV title, or the Cruiserweight title once you added 17 other guys. But those four guys, to me, that point on, NWO got watered down from that point on.
It's funny because 96 in that War Games, it was Hogan, Hall, Nash, and the NWO Sting. Then 97, those three weren't even in it. It was like Conan. It was somebody. Garbage. It was Buck. It was the B player. It was Norton or whatever. It was the B player. So it kind of defaulted on the necessity of the War Games because it's supposed to be your A players in this high profile match. So they even dumbed it down for that particular reason. So it didn't work on that forefront. So now, we gave the example of upping the ante with the War Games. Let's use another example of upping the ante, but it got ridiculous in 1988, and it even got ridiculous in the movie sense in 2000. And you could call it the Triple Cage of Terror or the Tower of Doom, but it was 3 cages of hell where you started from the top. Well, in 88, you started from the top and worked your way to the bottom to escape. And then in the 2000s, for the Ready to Rumble cage match, you started from the bottom and worked your way to the top to grab the belt. So TW, when you see that cage, the Tower of Doom concept was they used the War Games formula, 5-on-5, and there was no advantage. There was no 2-on-1 advantage. Right. It was just you had to be quick to get down. X-Pac. So you had to X-Pac it all the way down, but they like purposely had the 2-on-1 advantages in certain levels of the cages.
Right.
Now, the funny thing on the opposite side, again, we could use the Ready to Rumble because they tried to use that in, I believe it was Great American Bash 2000 when it was Jeff Jarrett against Diamond Dallas Page. So they had to work their way up and they had weapons and all that stuff. So I'm a fan of 1988. I can tolerate the 3 cages. You're going down and trying to escape. Wasn't
there one at a Halloween Havoc?
No, it was uncensored where it was Hulk. Well, Luger? Now it's no. It's gonna get Hulk. Now you're gonna. It was Horseman, Luger, Kevin Sullivan, Zeus, and I forgot the other guy. Al Green. I forgot it was the weapon of mass destruction against Hogan and Savage. They worked their way down. It was 8-on-2, and 2 guys won. So
it's horrible.
It's horrible.
And they didn't know how to film it. There's 1 minute. I remember Luger fighting Arn and Flair in the middle of the middle cage.
They fought in the bottom,
were they all
too.
Beating up Savage?
They were all beating up Savage, but then there was a missed spot. And then Luger, it wasn't like Luger betrayed him, but it was just Luger just fucked it up. That's the way they wanted to create, quandaries between.
One of the worst matches I've ever seen in my life. And I just remember feeling bad for those guys because I think it was Hogan. I think it was Luger, Arn, and Flair in that middle cage, and you could tell they don't want to take bumps. They're taking bumps on this fucking fence because there's not a ring. It's just the ring at the bottom, and then these damn birthday cake stacks of fences, and you can just tell they're like, God. And they're just standing there waiting like, I hope the camera's not on me. But it is, and then they start fighting, and you're like, this is god-awful, and I think everyone knew it. Like, that match would be good. Somehow, some way, Cactus Jack would have made a good match out of that. But throwing 10 losers in there who want no part of taking a bump in a regular match, you ain't getting them to do much in a fence bump, And it's just god-awful. I thought you were about to talk about what I think is a great concept, but has been ruined in years because they let one guy wipe everybody out like every couple of years, which is the Elimination Chamber. I like the concept where, you know, the whoever loses the coin toss has to come out first, or lost the match on Raw, whatever they do. And then those pods open up, but then...
Well, you know what?
Ron Strowman pins 5 out of 6 guys and then gets beat by the one.
Let's talk about the Elimination Chamber here because, again, that's upping the ante. That's a good example. That was 2002. It was Survivor Series where Shawn Michaels became the World Heavyweight Champion on the Raw side. And I think he started that match. It was such a good match. And, of course, you know, they had 4 guys... Well, it was a terrible outfit. They had 4 guys in their like cages waiting to be coming out in their pods. Good call, TW. And of course, you know, it was random. You did not know, but the light hit the pod, and then you came out of the pod, and then of course you did your thing once you came out of the pod. So the look of the elimination. Now, you know, let's talk about the looks of cages because War Games, of course, if you paid a ticket for War Games, the double cage and that's awesome. That's an aura right there. Tower of Doom looks scary as it's raw. Tower of Doom looks scary as fuck. I'm not even thinking about how the match is going to be good. I'm just thinking, I hope no one dies because you're all up top and working your way down.
To see the top.
Right. Well, you got to look up like that. But now let's talk about the Elimination Chamber. The look is, again, it's a combination of the bar with the fencing. So it's hurt, and you talked about the grading on the sides. So these wrestlers feel it the next day. So TW, talk about why the Elimination Chamber.
And then it's like chains hanging there. It's not even like the fence. They're like square chain shape.
I think they've fixed it up at least in the 2021.
They prettied it up way, way more. 02, I think they are actually in little cages. And then now the modern one is that pod with the plexiglass that the door opens, and it can open on both sides. Like I think they get in from the outside and then go, or they get in the cage. But it's the whole ringside area too. So, but the spots they do off the top of those pods onto the grate, that's one of my favorite versions of the video game to play is that match, climbing up there and then swinging down on people and doing moves off the pod. But
it's perfect for it's perfect for the athletic man because Ricochet would do good in that. But RVD performed well in 2002 in the first Elimination Chamber match. He kind of fucked up on the there. Yeah, he was there, Triple H and Booker T, but RVD did fuck.
Jericho take a super kick and break his pod, so maybe they were pods in the first year. Someone broke the pod by taking a bump into it, or a spear or something into it. Maybe that's more modern day.
It was Goldberg spearing a pod in one of the Elimination Chambers in 03. That's what you're talking about.
Okay, then maybe the pods have been there since day one, but it's so pretty now that you take for granted how barbaric it is. It's still barbaric. But I think they
kind of sanctified it. You know what I mean? They try to make it
still bumping on a grate, and you're still throwing into those metal bars with those. It almost looks like one of Shawn Michaels' one of them jackets he had with the chains hanging on it. That's what because they're kind of loose, so you can climb them, but they're not hard. Like it's got give, but you still got the bar that are holding those chains up together. So you're right. It's a combination of the two. Easy to climb, but not as brutal as just all blue bar. It's the crossbars aren't blue, just the vertical ones are. So, but it looks so good. But I agree with people, like I think Jericho's criticized it, or Bischoff, or Bruce Pritchard. It's lost some of its allure because you have, I think they had 4 one night, or at least 3 one night. They had a SmackDown and a Raw version. And they had a woman's version and then a tag team version. But the tag team version might have been on one where they didn't have a Raw and a SmackDown, or they did. But they've had 3 different matches in the same night. Like it's lost its appeal.
Oversaturation. Right. It's watered down much.
And you know what? If Raw doesn't have a feud worthy of putting 6 guys in there, then SmackDown gets it this year. Maybe even alternate it every year. Raw gets it one year, SmackDown. You almost have to do the women to get one too. But it's almost unfair to do it on the same night. Maybe they have it just a woman's, do it every 6 months. The woman 6 months, and then 6 months later is the guy, just so they're one a night.
Well, in a perfect world, WWE with Raw and SmackDown, they should have, separated the pay-per-views like they did in 2016, where there was a Raw pay-per-view, and then the next month, a SmackDown pay-per-view, and you didn't have to interject each other. But of course, ratings
or
play
make it Raw
a factor.
versus SmackDown. Have 3 Raw guys and 3 SmackDown guys in it.
The problem with that now in 2021 under TW is they intersect each other so much that it doesn't even feel special that you're a Raw guy or a SmackDown guy.
Right.
So before we close out TW, I understand, but the look is so great. But before we close out TW, because I want to close out with Hell in a Cell, I want to give an homage to Total Nonstop Action, aka Impact Wrestling, with their concept, their best cage match concept. I don't know if you agree with this. I'm not saying it is, but this is what they were known for during the Russo era, the Dixie Carter era. It was called Lethal Lockdown. It was a War Games type match. And then what they did when all 10 members came into the single cage, they closed the lid, but on top of the lid, there was weapons. There was trash cans, there was kendo sticks and all that stuff. And of course, AJ was an MVP of the Lethal Lockdown because sometimes he got out of that cage and he did a lot of spots on the top of the roof. I don't know if you saw those Lethal Lockdown
I've never seen one. I'm going to watch one soon. It
was like Team Cage against Team Angle one year. So I just wanted to give credence to that. But TW, it is kind of like War Games on acid with when you add the weapons on top of the cage when you close the cage with the lid. Are you a fan of having weapons of gimmicks in a cage, or does it oversaturate the cage match concept?
No, I don't mind that. Actually, that sounds like a good idea. But the problem with weapons is it's the same ones. It's a kendo stick, it's a chair, it's a trash can, and a lid. Or now these days, dudes got to throw thumbtacks out like Mick Foley and his War Games. But here, it's funny you just said something, right? Mm-hmm. AJ's still my guy, but he's a little up in age, and so he's with Omos or whatever his name is. So that's why I say Adam Cole's my favorite guy right now. But it's those 3: Adam Cole, AJ, Gargano. I hated AJ Styles when he was in TNA, and I'm going to tell you why. It's the same reason I don't respect AEW. If Impact, when they first started, they were just Impact. I watched it all the time. My buddies were on there, Team Canada. Every one of those dudes I know, right? Scott D'Amore trained me, the A1, all those guys, Tyson Dukes, Bobby Roode. I knew all those. Petey Williams was in my clique, the CIA, the Canadian Imperial Alliance. So I watched it from my buddies. Mm-hmm. As soon as Hogan and Dixie, or I don't know if Dixie's to blame, she might have been. As soon as Hogan and Bischoff made that Monday night show to come after Vince, that's when I lost all respect for it. So I liked none of it. And whoever they pushed, and for whatever reason it was AJ, I was like, nope, I don't like him, and I'm not going to like him. And it's stubborn, it's whatever. But then I deprived myself of watching some. I hated that 6-sided ring, still do. Mm-hmm. I deprived myself of watching it because I didn't want to give them my attention, my viewership, my whatever, because of how they operated. And that's how I feel AEW from day one has been that way. And real quick, because I can't have a show without taking a shot at them. The thing that made me laugh all day today was them saying they won in the ratings for that half an hour when Friday SmackDown overlapped Dynamite. No, they didn't. They won in the 18 to 49-year-olds at 10:30 at night when those people are still up because they live with their parents and don't have to work the next day. The people that watch WWE, on average, I think I read 50 to 60 years old are the people watching WWE on whatever given night. They record it and watch it another day. You didn't win the ratings war. You won a demographic, and the fact that they have to say, and what they do is they keep saying we won the demographic, and then they leave demographic off and just keep saying we won. So now people think, oh wow, they drew more of a rating. They didn't. So when you do stuff like that, to me, it's shady. It only works on people who are dumb and don't do their own homework or don't research it themselves. And so I'm going to watch a Lethal Lockdown because when you just explained it to me, it sounds tremendous. And the fact that I never even heard of that match, I've heard the name. I didn't know that was the match. Like, it was a War Games match, and then you put a lid on it. I'm like, as you're saying it, my eyes are getting big. I'm like, what? They get in there like War Games, and then they put a lid on it? Yes. That sounds like something I'd want to watch. And I love Kurt Angle, Christian Cage, another guy wrestle. Call me Nate Matson. But at the end of the day, I missed a lot of stuff because I just didn't want to give them my business, if you will. They weren't going to get my eyeballs and my attention because of how they operated. And you said it yourself, it was the Russo era, so that's probably why I missed it. Because if he's there, Bischoff's there, Hogan's there, and it's so junior high the way, like I said, you don't hear Ronald McDonald.
You have your taste. You had.
It's not about
you have
taste.
your.
I probably would have liked it. If
Oh, okay.
They wouldn't have done what they did with the whole making a Monday night show and say, we're coming for you, we're going to put you. It's just they set themselves up to fail by doing something they didn't have to do. Just have a wrestling show. Tell everybody, hey, we're having a couple matches. Come give us a try. I prefer humility over braggadocious, right? As a heel, I like braggadocious. But as a company, win me over. You're not winning me over by telling me the other guys suck. That's not how I work. And that's what they do on a regular frickin' basis.
Again,
back then.
You're a demographic that has your own taste. And I'm not saying taste
I'm
of what
still
you
in
like.
18 to 49, pal, and I didn't.
So am I.
Dynamite. Also didn't watch SmackDown, so
I
recorded both of them.
In a couple of years, we're both going to be 50. We're going to be out of this key money-making demographic, and we're still going to be watching this product, and then they're going to be like, we're not important to these people, these particular organizations. So let's close out this Steel Cage Carnage. It was great to talk about this, TW. It was really not about what match did we love.
I got an answer for you for Big Ray's favorite match.
Okay, well, since we're going to
Undertaker.
Okay, well, again, since we're going to be talking about the main event of what the cage match evolution has become, we have to talk about the Hell in a Cell, which actually started in 1987 because TW actually talked about a match that was Hell in a Cell-like with Austin Idol and Jerry Lawler, hair versus hair. They had the cage down to the bottom, right to the fencing, so it covered everything. The first Hell in a Cell was 1997, and it was Shawn Michaels against The Undertaker. I guess this match, TW, since it was called Hell in a Cell, it was a gimmick match made for The Undertaker because it took his opponent into the stages of hell. Because you had to literally go through hell to survive a match with The Undertaker. I don't know if this match was supposedly made for The Undertaker. I thought the casket match was really made for The Undertaker. The Hell in a Cell, it was groomed for The Undertaker. But again, Big Ray said what match he loved?
Mankind versus Undertaker.
Of course,
which he called it the first Hell in the Cell, but he might have called it their first Hell in the Cell.
Right, it was their first Hell in. That was the second official Hell in the Cell match.
But did Taker and Mankind do two of them? Or
no,
they only do one. Oh,
they only did one. It was the second official Hell in a Cell match. The first one was Shawn Michaels against The Undertaker, and Shawn Michaels, played the heel, and you even talked about how good he looked in that ring. He bled from head to toe and all that stuff. He fell off the side into the announcer's table. We could talk about, I think that match is a 5-star classic in the Meltzer eyes, but I think it doesn't get remembered as vehemently as Mankind versus The Undertaker because of the spot that Mankind did. Spots where he fell off the roof of the cage onto the
man. He got fucking peeled off of there.
But the question I have to you, in your humble opinion, does the spots overtake what the match could have been? Because I think, like I said, Michaels and Undertaker was a hell of a better match with a better ending than Mankind versus Undertaker because, of course, those spots are more memorable for Mankind's legacy and Undertaker's legacy. What say you, TW?
This is where I'll disagree. I think, first of all, I want to say this. Shawn versus Taker, Hell in the Cell, obviously it's got to have something to do with pushing Undertaker, make you think he's going to win. It's going to be his match, like the casket match, whatever, because it's hell. He's the Undertaker. However, I think they had this with Shawn in mind, and if it would have been 5 years earlier, Mr. Perfect, because you need a guy who can bump in there to make it look hellish, right? Okay, so I would say it was for both Shawn and Taker to accentuate both. And one thing I like about this match more than anything, and it's obviously not the first one, but I would say this match arguably is the one because this match happened because of Undertaker versus Brett at SummerSlam where Shawn cost him the match in his eyes. That match was okay, but this match, Shawn Michaels is a little guy. Undertaker is bigger than Hulk Hogan. And you had the stigma where Bret Hart couldn't lace Hogan's boot. Shawn Michaels really couldn't because Bret was singles before Shawn was in Intercontinental. And Savage made it where you could see, because Savage isn't much bigger than Bret or Shawn, I wouldn't think. But Shawn versus Undertaker was the match that let everybody know a little guy can go toe-to-toe with a big guy, because he took everything Taker threw at him and came back for more and also dished out some. And so I think in that regard, that's why this match is so, for me, important, monumental. It's the match that, in theory, because they're little guys, he should just be getting beaten around this cage like nobody's business or whatever. And he went on to have matches with Sid, matches with Yokozuna. Did Shawn ever work Yokozuna? Bret did. Had a good match with him. But he wrestled Sid. He wrestled Kevin Nash. He wrestled Taker. Probably Kane. He wrestled all these big guys, and no one questioned why that little dude's in there with the big guy. That's why I give Shawn. And Bret had matches with those guys too. Bret had a good match with Diesel. Not the best match he ever had, but probably the best Diesel ever had. And so I like it for that reason. But what I really love, and this is when I'm taking it back to Mankind, I love that Mick Foley and Terry Funk watched that match together, because Mick Foley was like, how am I supposed to follow that? And they watched it, and the two of them came up with the idea to start. Terry Funk really came up with the idea to start the match on the top of the cage. So at the very least, it's different.
It's different. Right.
Because it is hard to follow that. And they're not going to put all that money into making that cage and not use it twice. So you knew they were using it again. And wasn't Michaels Taker 2 Hell in a Cell, the one at WrestleMania? Oh, no. Triple H.
That was Triple H.
Which was really just them two beating the shit out of each other. It wasn't even comparable, not in a good way or a bad way, but it wasn't. It was more barbaric than barbaric. I just made up another word. But for Mick Foley, his match, if he only took the hip toss off the cage and to the table, and then they came in the ring and just had another wrestling match, it would be forgettable. But the fact that he did that, climbed back up there, and then the cage broke when it was supposed to be a 3-step, like he took the third choke slam before it fell, and the idea was he'd already be halfway down. So and then the chair lands on his face, and then
that wasn't planned. That wasn't planned. Well, the thumbtacks were planned.
So this match just was like an absolute carnage, and it wasn't a one-trick pony with that hip toss. You ended up having all these other things happen. Shawn and Taker set the pace, and Mick Foley and Taker took that baton and said, hold my beer. And they went out and did one better. And I can't think of any other one that we would talk about at the same level. And ironically enough, I told you before we started recording, I fell into this wormhole and started watching other stuff on YouTube. I had no idea. On paper, it was always Taker versus Mankind. But the reality is, it was supposed to be Mankind versus Austin. But they didn't think the fans would buy Austin versus Mankind, so they made it Taker, and both Taker and Mankind are like, we've already wrestled each other 900 times in all these different what are we supposed to do? So there was the added pressure of them having to deliver in a different way than they'd already done and follow the Shawn Michaels Taker match. So everything was stacked against these guys, and I think they more than rose to it. And I don't know how much of it was Taker. It sounds like the majority of it is Terry Funk and Mick Foley coming up with all these ideas, and Taker was just a good guy to follow it out and jumped off that cage back in the ring, probably thinking he killed Mick Foley with a broken ankle. The whole match he had a broken ankle and climbed that cage twice.
He broke his ankle when he fell down, when he dropped down. He said that.
It was already broken. It was broken before the match.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying when he went down.
And he had to jump in the ring. His leg was taped up under the boot. It was already broken. Because that's what Bruce Pritchard said. He said, oh, and by the way, Taker can't move because he has a fractured ankle. And so Mick's like, what the fuck? Like, you're setting me up to fail, and I'm going from being in the ring with the top guy, which is Austin, the champion, to now being in there with the guy who just has nothing going on. So, hey, let's throw Mick Foley with the Undertaker and give him a match. And it ends up being arguably, it's got to be the best gimmick match in the history of wrestling.
But as anything, the watered down oversaturation, the Hell in a Cell has a great match in Undertaker and Michaels, a great match in Undertaker and Mankind. But of course, there is the worst Hell in a Cell in the history of Hell in a Cells, and that would be Seth Rollins against The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. And they say it's the worst match ever because of the ending where all these chairs were on Bray Wyatt, but then somehow he comes out of the like a zombie, and it just never made no sense. And Bray Wyatt didn't even win the title at that Hell in a Cell. So I guess that's why a lot of people were jaded about that match. They booed that match out the building, and rightfully so. I just wanted to give that dichotomy for all the reflectionites. There is a good cage match, and there's also a bad cage match. TW gave us examples of a good Tower of Doom, maybe, and there a bad Tower of Doom. There's
a good Tower of Doom? What?
88 was still a good Tower of Doom. I'm sorry to say that. I'm just saying. But anyway, neither here nor there. Your homework assignment, TW, is to watch Lethal Lockdown at your earliest convenience.
Funny thing. So Honky Tonk Man obviously always is an Elvis impersonator when you think of what he is.
Okay.
It never occurred to me until watching Austin Idol versus Jerry Lawler in 1982. Is that what
87.
that was? 84?
87.
87. Yeah. 82 was Backlund and Snuka. Jerry Lawler is 100% wearing a Honky Tonk Man outfit in this match. It's the powder blue with the one shoulder strap. And I just thought, holy shit, Honky Tonk wasn't there to be an Elvis impersonator. He was there to impersonate Jerry Lawler, the king of Memphis and the king of rock and roll. It's just like Dusty, or not Dusty, Virgil being called Virgil, and then Vincent. I think, and the fact that he was his cousin to boot, I think it was a shot at Lawler to have. I never would have thought that in my life, but I remember reading the aftermaths. Jerry Lawler was not happy about Honky Tonk Man's character in WWF, and now I understand because he dressed just like him. And what move did he do all the time?
Shake, rattle, and roll, and the fist too.
The
off
fist.
the top.
He
did
everything Lawler did,
right.
And I never ever put it together until I saw this match, Austin Idol, and I think I don't know if we ever said. The whole thing was Lawler never lost a hair match, and he lost it and got his head shaved in the ring. I did say he lost it because of outside help, but they shaved his head in the ring, and I actually thought to myself, this is refreshing because, A babyface got his head shaved. That's not very common, and he lost. Not just you get your head shaved because you got jumped, but he lost his match and then got his head shaved. So I wanted to add that in there because we got all over the place because I digress. But, yeah, I never did the math that Honky Tonk Man's look and everything, other than the pompadour, was really stealing everything from Jerry Lawler. Now I understand why Lawler was mad.
Was it a rib? I don't know. We'll never know. We have to ask Vince McMahon.
It was a theft.
Oh, it's a theft. Well, neither here nor there.
You want to come here? How about we get your cousin up here instead?
And he got over. He did. And it was Vince McMahon who got him over. So, with that being said, Reflectionites, we hope that you enjoy this special spotlight called Steel Cage Carnage on the PWSL networks at podbean.com. TW, give out that treat for all the Reflectionites, those social medias.
Boats and hoes. The Pro Wrestling Coalition Network hosts us these days also. So we got to give them a shout out at PWC Network at podbean.com. Our show on Twitter is at PW Reflection. Big Ray, can't do it without him, at Big Ray Hernandez. My Twitters are at TommyWonder19, which is my original one that I got a nice doozy. I'm up to 14 likes and a retweet on it because I had a nice little burn on this stupid lady that had the dumbest response to something I ever saw. But if you want to read it, you got to go read my Twitter.
She's a liberal. She's a liberal. I know.
1,000%. And she's those, AEIOUs, whatever. At the Tommy Wonder, I'm gonna get Cara Duned. But at the Tommy Wonder is my non-political Twitter. Facebook.com/Tommy Wonder is my Facebook. Snapchat is #Wonder. Dumb Duel and an Idiot on YouTube. I've been slacking. Either I've been sick or one of us or all of us have been out of town. And then, of course, Big Vito, bigvitobrand.wixsite.com, and then patreon.com/the Big Vito Brand. Him and his wife are always helping us out, tweeting us out on Twitter and helping us get a bigger following. So we appreciate all those guys. Absolutely. And again, shout out to Greenpeace, the Iron Lung, for giving us this idea for the Steel Cage Carnage show. And of course, you can find me on my Twitter at PWSOPROF. That's PWSOPROF. Hopefully this episode of the PWSO
the Pro Wrestling Reflection will be on the YouTubes, on the PWR networks. And of course, follow my guys, my brothers in arms, 8-Track Dashley, the king of the reactions at, 8-Track Brown, the king of the reactions at 8-Track Dashley. And of course, the man with the documents, the man who has the proof of everything that this world is going to the shitter, Billy Ray Valentine at Obi-Wan You Know Me. And of course, for the official Halloween, we will be off because that's the treat I'm giving TW, so he can go in costume, meet the Ultimate Warrior, and get all the candies on the official Sunday of Halloween. So we will be back on the Podbeans the week after Halloween for that. And again, I don't know what we're going to do. I think we're going to go maybe to the movies, TW. Maybe we'll do that. Or maybe we'll do
I had an idea. And I also want to, I think it's 8-Track Brown. He popped me on your hustle page today with the what if. I think it was him. I hope if it wasn't.
Oh, what if Shonuff had the Infinity Stone?
Had the Infinity Gauntlet. I laughed for a good 5 minutes when I saw that picture.
That is a funny.
Who's the master? Shonuff. But he said, give us the what if we all want or whatever. But that was good. But as I'm watching these cage matches, it dawned on me, and it's mostly with one glaring exception. I thought, I don't know how he would do it, and obviously this is just spitballing, but I'm saying it on the air, so if anybody's interested in us doing it, give us feedback. But replacement players, right? So you got the Skyscrapers. Sid got replaced with The Undertaker. Right. In hindsight, that's a pretty big switch, but at the moment, how was it? The Freebirds got rid of Buddy Jack, put in Jimmy Garvin, and then added Terry Gordy back to it. Midnight Express was Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton, and then Stan Lane. So almost like comparing the old versus the new version. And then the
Crush,
Horsemen, obviously,
Crush with
Crush
the
and
Demolition,
and wasn't he with the Road Warriors? But the one thing, well, I guess that is a WWE. That's a good one though. I think Crush made Demolition better. Plus, he joined when they were still three, not.
No, but I get what you're saying.
Replace acts.
Replacement players on great gimmicks that already work.
The worst one ever, I think, off the top of my head, is Lee Cassidy replacing Shawn Michaels and the New Rockers.
No, it's Paul Roma being in the Four Horsemen. That's what it was.
Oh no, I meant WWE. There's Demolition in that one, or.
But we're wrestling. We're a wrestling podcast. We got to talk about all of them. We got to talk about everybody.
No,
you can talk about the.
Trying to think of. Damn it, you made me mess up because I was thinking of one that happened in WWE where they replaced somebody in a camp. The Orient Express was Paul Diamond at the mask, Kato, and then got replaced by Saito, I think was his name, Mr. Saito or whatever.
The other way around. Saito was first.
Replaced by Paul Diamond.
Yeah.
Bad company. Tanaka and Diamond were bad company. Then they became. Oh, he just joined them in WWF after the fact. Yeah, so I mean, there's lots of replacement guys that took people's spots, and I just thought, man, there's a lot of them. Like there's enough. Like we could do a spotlight on replacement players and gimmicks that worked, and see how the A's and B's of gimmicks. We can do that kind of spot. Heidenreich as worse than Lee Cassidy,
or Droz and the Road Warriors. We could talk about that.
Droz was the Road Warrior, but so was Heidenreich. They both were Road Warriors.
I don't want to acknowledge that one. That was a bad one. But anyway,
there was one that I had because DX. It was Shawn, Triple H in China, and Rick Rude, and then it was Triple H, the New Outlaws, and X-Pac in China and Rick Rude. Not Rick Rude, he left. But there's lots of them, man. There's just tons of them, and it's just like, wow. It's amazing how many different, Roderick Strong joining the Ultimate. We were both wrong, by the way. He didn't go there and start another group with the letters UE.
It is what it is. But you know what? Save those thoughts. Write them down and give it to the professor, and then we will see what we can do with that. It's a good concept for a future spotlight, maybe at the end of the year. Replacement players and gimmicks that work. But anyway, I'm the professor. That's Mr. Wonderful TW saying good night and happy Halloween. We'll see you the week after Trick or Treat Reflection Nights.
Boats and hoes.
It's all about the boats and hoes.